There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children begin to shift. You spend decades raising them, guiding them, and making sacrifices for them. But then, one day, you realize something has changed. Maybe they ignore your advice, dismiss your opinions, speak down to you, or worse, make you feel like a burden. And it hurts. If your children have started treating you with less respect than you deserve, you might feel frustrated or even angry. You might want to remind them of everything you've done for them, of the years you spent putting them first. But here's the truth. Getting angry won't fix it. In fact, it often makes things worse. Instead, there's a much more effective way to regain their respect. Without fighting, without arguments, and without resentment. Today, I'm going to share 6 things you can do when your children don't respect you. These are powerful shifts, simple changes in how you respond, that can completely transform the way they see you. Some of these may surprise you, but if you stay with me until the end, you'll learn how to reclaim your role as a respected and valued figure in their lives. Action 1. Stop chasing their approval. One of the biggest mistakes parents make, especially as they grow older, is trying too hard to please their children. Maybe you've noticed this in yourself. You go out of your way to accommodate them. You say yes when you really want to say no. You put their needs ahead of your own, hoping that if you just do enough, they'll appreciate you more. But here's the painful truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's earned through self-respect. If you're always bending over backwards, always giving in, always trying to keep the peace, what you're really teaching them is that your feelings come second. And once they believe that, it becomes easy for them to take you for granted. I once knew a woman named Agnes, a strong, independent lady in her younger years. But as she got older, she began letting her children make all the decisions. She rearranged her schedule around their needs, kept her opinions to herself, and even ignored how they spoke down to her. "I just want to keep the family together," she once told me. But what happened? Her children stopped valuing her. They saw her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, always stay silent. She thought she was keeping the peace, but in truth, she was losing her voice. If your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to demand it. It's to stop acting like you need it. Set boundaries. Say no when you need to. Speak your mind, even if they don't like what you have to say. Because the moment you start respecting yourself, they'll start seeing you differently. And in time, that respect will return. Action 2. Don't argue. Lead by example. When your children dismiss your opinions, talk over you, or treat you with disrespect, your first instinct might be to argue, to remind them of everything you've done or to demand that they listen. But here's something that can save you years of frustration. Arguing never works. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly began respecting you just because you argued with them? Respect isn't earned through shouting matches. It's earned through presence, through the way you carry yourself and the way you respond when your patience is tested. If you meet their disrespect with anger, all you do is reinforce their belief that they can control your emotions. I once knew a man named Walter, a retired teacher who had once led classrooms with confidence and composure. But at home in Greenfield, his grown children began treating him like an afterthought. They ignored his advice, brushed off his concerns, and even laughed when he tried to speak seriously. At first, Walter pushed back. He raised his voice. He tried to assert his authority. But the more he argued, the worse things became. Then, one day, Walter made a quiet change. He stopped arguing. He started truly listening. He spoke calmly, with wisdom, not to win, but to communicate. Slowly, his children noticed the difference. They saw a man who no longer needed their approval, a man who didn't try to prove anything because he already knew his worth. If your children don't respect you, don't fight them for it. Show them what respect looks like by the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the dignity you maintain. Speak with calm confidence, and never lower yourself to their level. Hold your ground with grace, and in time, they'll follow your lead. Action 3. Withdraw your emotional dependence. One of the hardest lessons to accept as a parent is this: you can't rely on your children for emotional fulfillment. Of course you love them, and you may want their love and respect in return. But the moment they sense that you need them to feel valued, the balance of the relationship begins to shift. Here's the reality. Even your own children respect people who are emotionally independent. When you rely on them for validation, affection, or attention, it can feel like pressure. Instead of feeling grateful, they may feel burdened. I knew a woman named Clara, a kind-hearted mother who had given her all to her children. But as they grew busy with their own lives, she found herself waiting by the phone, hoping for a call. When they didn't call, she called them. Often, she reminded them how much she missed them. She asked when they'd visit. She said, "I'm always here for you." But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them away. They began seeing her calls as obligations instead of joyful connections. Then one day, Clara decided to do something different. She stopped waiting. She stopped calling first. Instead, she focused on herself. She joined a gardening club in Greenfield. She began hiking with friends. She took care of her own happiness. And then something unexpected happened. Her children started calling more. They were curious about her life. They admired her independence. The lesson is simple. The less you depend on your children to feel needed, the more they will value you. When you show them that you can stand strong on your own, they'll begin to respect you. Not out of guilt, but from genuine admiration. Action 4. Set boundaries and enforce them. One of the biggest reasons children lose respect for their parents is simple. The parents allow it. If you let your children speak to you disrespectfully, ignore your opinions, or treat your time and feelings as unimportant, they'll continue doing it. Not because they're unkind, but because people, especially family, often treat us the way we teach them to. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting your children off. It means calmly and firmly deciding what kind of behavior you will and will not accept. And more importantly, it means enforcing those boundaries when they're crossed. I remember a man named Harold, a retired business owner in Greenfield. He had once led teams with discipline and clarity, but when it came to his adult children, he struggled. They interrupted him, dismissed his concerns, and criticized how he lived. At first, Harold tolerated it. "It's not worth the fight," he told himself. But eventually, he realized that his silence was teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. So, he changed. When his son interrupted, he calmly said, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen." When his daughter mocked his opinion, he replied, "You don't have to agree, but I expect respect." And when they pushed his limits, he told them directly, if they couldn't treat him with basic decency, they wouldn't be spending time together. And something happened. They started listening. At first, they resisted, but slowly, they began to realize that Harold wasn't backing down. He valued himself enough to expect respect. And because of that, they started giving it to him. If your children don't respect you, ask yourself, are you allowing it? Because if you don't set the standard, no one else will. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will either. Action 5. Stop giving without appreciation. One of the quickest ways to lose someone's respect is to keep giving to those who don't appreciate it. As parents, we do this more often than we realize. We give our time, our energy, our support, without pause, even when it's ignored or taken for granted. But here's the truth. When you keep giving to someone who doesn't value it, you're not building love. you're building entitlement. They stop seeing your kindness as something special. They start seeing it as something they deserve. And when you stop giving, they don't feel grateful. They feel annoyed. I knew a man named Martin, a generous father who had always been there for his children. He gave money when they needed it, changed his plans to help them, and rearranged his life to fit around theirs. But instead of thanks, he got complaints. They expected more. And when Martin finally needed their help, they were too busy. That's when Martin decided to change. He stopped offering help before it was even asked. He stopped overextending himself. And most importantly, he started saying no when he needed to. At first, his children didn't like the new boundaries. They were frustrated. But over time, they began to understand. They started appreciating his time. They thanked him more. Why? Because they finally saw that his help was a gift, not a guarantee. If your children don't value your time or kindness, take a step back. Ask yourself, am I giving more than I should? And if the answer is yes, what would happen if I stopped? When you teach people that your generosity is conditional on respect, they begin to treat it with the value it deserves. Action 6. Build a life outside of them. One of the most powerful ways to regain your children's respect is to show them that your happiness doesn't revolve around them. As parents, it's natural to pour ourselves into our children's lives. But as they grow older and the roles shift, you must reclaim space for yourself. People respect those who have their own purpose, their own joy, their own rhythm. If your children see you as someone who waits around for their call or attention, they may start seeing you as someone who has no life of their own. I knew a woman named Dorothy, a widow in her 70s. After her husband passed, she poured all her attention into her children. She checked in constantly, gave unsolicited advice, and hoped they'd fill the emotional space her husband once occupied. But it backfired. The more she tried to connect, the more they pulled away. They visited less. Their calls were shorter, and Dorothy felt more alone than ever. Then she made a bold decision. She joined a local art class in Greenfield. She traveled with friends. She volunteered at the animal shelter. She stopped centering her life around her children. And something amazing happened. Her children started calling more. They asked about her activities. They admired her independence. They respected her. So ask yourself, do my children see me as someone who is living or someone who is waiting? Because when you show them that your life is full and meaningful, they'll start seeing you as someone who doesn't need their attention, yet still deserves their respect. Final thoughts. Earning respect through self-respect. Respect is not something you can demand from your children. It's something you inspire, not through guilt or force, but through the way you live, the way you carry yourself, and the way you draw boundaries. If your children have started treating you with less care, less consideration, or less respect, don't waste your energy getting angry. Shift your approach. Stop chasing their approval. The less you need it, the more likely they are to offer it. A lead by example. Your dignity will always speak louder than your words. Withdraw emotional dependence. The more emotionally self-sufficient you are, the more they'll respect your presence. Set boundaries. People, even your children, treat you the way you teach them to. Stop giving without appreciation. Generosity without gratitude turns into expectation, not love. Build a life outside of them. People admire those who have their own purpose and passions. When you do these things, something remarkable happens. Your children begin to see you differently. Not as someone sitting by the phone, hoping for attention. Not as someone clinging to their place in the family. But as someone who lives with purpose, who moves with confidence, and who commands respect simply by being who they are. And in time, that respect returns. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it.